couple of questions on behalf of the organization, and some questions that some students actually had as well. And I think this actually aligns in accordance with your field, specifically with law. So I'm going to be asking one of the questions, which is actually, how do you see blockchain affecting and disrupting the fields that you're working in, the career fields that you're in right now, whether it be law, regulation, compliance, or policy, right? Do you, like, you know, in West Virginia or like in other countries so far, they had a voting system established. But beyond that, that's not really affecting someone's career per se. Is there any sort of roles that you are seeing blockchain play into offering your client services, for example, or in compliance, the role that even Amber will play?
So as someone who's kind of an analytics geek, and my practice is in anti-money laundering, but I think that blockchain and AI in tandem are going to do absolutely incredible things in terms of investigation. We hear a lot about how Bitcoin can be used for criminality. I wouldn't necessarily use it that way, especially just as a first layer transaction, but we're learning that more and more these things can be used by law enforcement, that you can have investigations. I certainly don't want a record of my drug deal on an immutable public ledger. It sounds a little silly. But I think that we'll see more and more of those things from an analytics perspective. I think that that's going to have incredible value for law enforcement. I also think that it's going to have incredible value from an anti-corruption perspective. Because I do believe that as individuals we have a right to privacy, but I think that our governments, I think that organizations have an obligation to transparency. And I think that blockchain is one of the things that's going to facilitate that in ways that we haven't even imagined yet.
I can throw something on, speaking on blockchain. Generally, not specific to cryptocurrency, which is that so much of we have all these legal regimes that are set up around keeping track of things, whether that's like the land registry, keeps track of real property, whether that's personal property, registers that keep track of like who's got liens on what, whether that's shareholder registers of who owns what in one corporation. And the way in which these things are managed, let you know a little secret, horribly and inefficiently, which contributes in part to enormous legal bills. And there are already, just to the question, people starting to look at how can you use blockchain as a technology to improve these systems. We have these legal systems to make them work better for people and be more efficient. And maybe it might make lawyers a little bit more, but I'm actually all for that if it's going to do some public good.
Yeah, a couple of specific examples in the legal field. There's a company out there called Blue Jay Legal, who is designing some, I guess for lack of a better word, some AI that can analyze the facts of a case, and I'm grossly oversimplifying here, but analyze facts of a case, and analyze hundreds of cases that have come before it, and then give you a kind of success ratio, potential success ratio, based on your facts. And that is designed to help you decide whether to push hard, go to trial, make all those strategic decisions. So that is a fascinating way that lawyers are being disrupted. Another one is we've got an AI program at Fasken now where due diligence, the tedious review of a company's contracts before like a big merger can be automated. And that is going to cut down on the bodies that are needed for a file. But the way we're looking at it is, it's not as though we're going to make less money, we might make less money on a particular file, but if we're being more efficient, we can have more files. And so I don't think that it's, I don't think that we should be beholden to an old way of doing business. I think that there are new ways of doing business, and if it uses bodies in different ways, then it could be a net positive for everyone.
So maybe a couple of levels to this. So from the industry I work in, which is financial services, I think there's huge potential for the technology of blockchain to completely disrupt that market. I say that with a slight caveat. I do think that blockchain technology is often used as kind of a panacea for all problems or a solution to all problems. I think it is a solution to many problems, but not as many as people might think, and there are certain reasons why I think that. But certainly in things like the payments landscape or supply chain, which both the financial services world, particularly banking, is heavily involved with. There's definitely scope to disrupt that there. And then as Amber's mentioned, particularly around the KYC and identity aspect. Again, I want to caveat, I think it's a really terrible idea to put identity information onto a blockchain for several reasons, but that's not to say that you can't put an attestation of someone's identity onto a blockchain and use that to cross borders and move countries more efficiently or whatever it may be. And there are some really interesting companies here in Canada doing just that work. A company called Shift I recommend you all look up. It's a really interesting one looking at that space right now. So financial services, you could go on about it forever. On our side as Grant Thornton, I think it actually has the potential to disrupt our company in several ways, and we need to think about how we go along with that ride. It's no secret that our firm and a number of the Big Four are all trying to figure out at the moment, for example, how you apply the financial reporting rules to cryptocurrency right now. Doing a financial statement audit for a cryptocurrency exchange is a challenge that a number of firms are dealing with, and I don't think anyone has really truly figured out yet. And so there's, and particularly on the tax side as well, I would sort of almost suggest that if anyone in the room is interested in the accounting and the tax side as it relates to cryptocurrency, we very much want to hear from you. That's something that we all need people for, and it's something that our business is certainly looking to figure out. So I think but I do see it as an opportunity rather than a threat, I think, for our business and for a number of other industries as well as financial services.
I think as an AML investigator, anyone in compliance, that the big banks and most financial institutions are always looking to cut those costs because it is a cost center, it's not a revenue maker. So adding value to everything you do is always very important because they are good with AI, machine learning, it's going to cut down probably about 40 to 50% of the work we do because a lot of it's administrative, saving documents. So from an AML standpoint, it's definitely thinking about the future of money, which is blockchain and cryptocurrency, and trying to progress your career in that direction.
Okay. Very excellent, actually, answers. We just found out a couple companies right here, a lot of different disruptions occurring within your field. I think that is one of the questions that is on many people's mind in terms of just the conventional orthodox institutions that we have established in societies. We see blockchain disrupted and being talked about in finance, in supply chain, as you mentioned, in other areas, database solutions. But we never see this sort of area that we ever discuss about. So on one last note, the common theme in tonight, as you could agree, that everyone touched on, was about personal growth and how they came to learn in the space. And you mentioned, particularly, I believe it was Amber that mentioned this, about the different sources that people could gather information from. And I think it's in everyone's value over here, and everyone's interest over here tonight, to learn further. So are there any particular recommendations from all of you, from your journeys, and Laura, feel free to chime in as well, about particular courses, organizations, resources, any publications or any authors and speakers out there that really touch base with you and helped you grow and learn? And yeah, I guess that was pretty much it. It's the resources, really, that you utilize yourself, in particular.
So I probably watch Andreas Antonopoulos videos still. Continuously. I will watch them when I'm cooking. There's some that I've watched probably 5 or 6 times. LOP.net, so LOPP.net, is an absolutely just incredible repository. It's pretty Bitcoin specific, but really great repository of different reliable resources that someone's looked at and has said, yes, this makes sense. So those are my top 2, definitely. And getting good advice from Evan and knowledgeable folks. I think I can't understate that enough, just the people that are in your network and being able to communicate with them and being able to reach out and saying, I think this is a potential issue, or Giles, I'm seeing this, what are you seeing in your practice? That's so important.
Yeah, read Mastering Bitcoin and Mastering Ethereum when it eventually gets published. I'm just trying to think of. I also, the other one I can make is there's some social histories of cryptocurrency, digital gold by Van Copper. Away from the sort of and more about the people, which is I find very interesting, as well as just understanding sort of how these technologies came to be and how these institutions have grown up. So it's less on the sort of technical side, it's more sort of popular reading, but I find the history of it all very interesting as well.
To piggyback off that with books, I'm actually reading Age of the Internet, the Internet of Money, right now. The Age of Cryptocurrency is actually a really good book by Michael Casey that actually gives a good framework. For some out there advice, I would just jump into the industry, to be quite honest. I was reading a lot of articles. I'm on CoinDesk.com. Cointelegraph has amazing articles by amazing editors and amazing authors, but it's nothing compared to when you're in the industry and you're actually seeing it face to face, what a transaction looks like, how crypto exchanges are using hot wallets. You have to really touch this stuff and be a practitioner. So if there's any way, and Laura gave some great advice on how to get into the industry, find your way in the industry and you learn as you go.
Oh, and limit the amount of time you spend on crypto Twitter. Do not get sucked into crypto Twitter.
Yeah, I completely agree with Stephen. Nothing beats actually getting in and touching the industry. The way that I learned a whole bunch just buying Bitcoin to begin with. Like that's when I came over here and I was like, oh man, there's got to be a better way to move some money. I learned so much just by going through that process, signing up to an exchange, like figuring, and so that's really bad. If you haven't done that, maybe not right now, but I'd recommend getting into it in that way. Yeah. Yeah. What else? So there's a whole meetup community that's focused around blockchain and Bitcoin. If you haven't heard of meetup.com, I recommend you go on there. Even if you're not interested in crypto, you're interested in photography, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there as well, but there's a load on Bitcoin and blockchain. I was at one last night, just around the hall, and listening to a lecture on blockchain, and it's all free. You can listen to some great speakers, so utilize that as much as possible whilst it's still there. And then finally, I think a number of us here on the panel have done the Certified Bitcoin Professional. There are a number of other certifications springing up now, but that's probably one of the originals, and I think gives a really great foundational knowledge to the industry. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I took it as part of my learning in this field, and we're all continuing to learn. But it gave some real good foundational knowledge for me to take into my job and start having some vaguely credible conversations with clients. So, yeah.
Feel like everyone's covered this very, very well. So try to answer it a little bit differently. What I've been doing is trying to follow practitioners who are in cities and regions that are further ahead than Toronto. So I try to pay a lot of attention to what's going on in Silicon Valley and to a lesser extent New York. And it's kind of the expression "dress for the job that you want." Well, pay attention to who the role that you want 5 years from now. See what those people are up to. See what they're writing about. See what they're identifying as big issues. And I think that that is kind of a shortcut to identifying some really interesting topics and issues.
I'll just add two things to it. I'm a big fan of lists, and I actually literally wrote down a list of questions that I had, and I kept coming back to that. So I'd say, I have a question about difference between like hot wallet and when they say a mobile wallet, and they say this and they say that, and all of these terms. I go to so many meetups, so many talks, and I go to the same meetup and the same talk over and over again because I get something different every single time. And I would take one question and I'd say to myself, right, I'm going to get the answer to this question. I might watch a YouTube video, I might read something, and I might ask someone. And then I actually collated, I created myself, I'm a teacher, so you can probably see, created myself a little like reference guide so that when I was learning something new, I could refer back to it. The other thing I did, which is probably a little bit different from everyone else's answer, is I had no background in finance, banking, capital markets, Like, I bought some stocks a few times, but that was really it. I actually went and did some research about how all the financial industries kind of interact, what that looks like, what FX trading looks like, all of these things that already exist. Because I really needed to understand, how does cryptocurrency, specifically in this situation, how does it impact, change, create fear, or disrupt what already happens? Because it allowed me to fill in the gaps for myself so that I could see, right, what skills are gonna be required? What kinds of thinking are gonna be required? What can I do and what can I learn without me going and deciding I'm gonna go get a degree in economics or finance? I looked at what already existed and really did that through the questions and the problems I didn't have the answer to.
See, I love this type of conversation here because we really get to gauge. We all have different sorts of learning habits and behaviors. And I guess, I don't know if anyone else relates to this, but the reason why I asked this because I thought from everyone's perspective here, people learn differently. And when we hear you and your thought process, to you, it might just seem like your regular old deal. But from another person, it might say, well, they said something really interesting right there. That's a whole new perspective. Well, I never was exposed to that way. And it really brings us to look around things on the whole new picture. So I really appreciate you guys actually giving very thorough answers on that. And thank you very much. Of course, this is going to be recorded, but take the floor away. Only had those 2 questions. I hope it didn't take too much time.
We can open it up to the audience now.
Yeah.
We've got a bit more time, so.
I'm just curious, I mean, we're talking about law and regulation, and most of what was discussed out here was more from like a business's perspective. Now, we do know that there are ecosystems, gaming ecosystems for that matter, where individuals can create cryptocurrency or non-fungible tokens that they can sell to other individuals. How do you see that being, kind of regulated or taken care of by the law? Because there, it's not really the company that's selling something, it's an individual selling it to another individual, and because it's in a gaming ecosystem, it doesn't really have to be someone in the same, jurisdiction doing that.
I'll just give a short answer to that. I mean, a lot of these legal regimes we've talked about businesses, but they apply as equally to individuals as they do to businesses. It's perfectly possible for an individual on their own to engage in an activity that's offside securities law. And to give a crypto-specific example, there are people who did really well trading crypto and then thought it would be a great idea if they got friends and family to give them some money so they can invest it, and they just take a little fee on the say they take their 2 and 20 fee and basically run a fund. Well, guess what? That's a unregistered investment fund, and if the securities regulators get wind of that, they will take action. Particularly if the friends and family happen to lose money along the way, as many of them did. And I'm speaking from knowledge of circumstances where this has happened. So I use that as an illustration of how the law can apply as equally to what people are doing as individuals as to businesses. So just to say, like, there's a lot of pitfalls in this area, and individuals have to be careful of them as well. So I hope that addressed your question, but I understood it too, which I understood to be directed as now how might this affect individuals, and the answer is it can. It's not specific at all to businesses what we're talking about.
When it comes to anti-money laundering regulation, it doesn't necessarily, if something's for business purposes, it doesn't necessarily mean that I've incorporated a company. So for instance, taking it outside of a cryptocurrency example, if you come back from the US and you have US dollars, and I'm going to the US next week, and I'm like, oh hey, can I just buy your US dollars so I don't have to go down to the currency exchange? And we just do that as friends, as a peer-to-peer thing. That's not a regulated activity in the fiat world. That's not, I don't think, going to be a regulated activity in the crypto world either. Those are just transactions that happen between humans. However, as an individual human, if I now hang out my shingle or start putting ads on the internet to say, hey, I'm Amber, sell me your US dollars, I will give you the best rates. It doesn't matter that I haven't incorporated a company. I am doing business. I am soliciting the public to come and do business with me, at which point I would be a regulated currency exchange, and once we have anti-money laundering laws around cryptocurrency, I would be a cryptocurrency exchange if I was doing that in the crypto sphere. The issue that you get into that I think is really interesting internationally is with crypto, you can deploy software, and that's instant, and it's global. But your regulations are still going to be slow, and they're still going to be jurisdictional, and you're going to be deciding which jurisdictions you want to do business with and how much of a risk that is for you if you're not playing by their rules.
I do get what you guys are saying, but in terms of the ecosystem that I'm talking about and the gaming aspect of it, it's more like, you know, just take real world example, it's like Pokemon cards. So,
Right.
you know, someone's got a Pokemon card and it's one of the rare ones and someone else wants to buy it. So these are non-fungible tokens, and if they're being created, you know, like the one I'm talking about in specific is, I think, a game called Sandbox by Pixel. I've never played it, but I've just read and heard about it. And there, users can create the non-fungible tokens, and they can sell it and monetize it. So how does that kind of, you know, come into this play?
I think the key is what I think what Amber said, is at what point do you cross over just engaging in, you know, personal transactions and start carrying on a business? And that's sort of a common theme in any regulatory regime is, you know, at what point are you selling the selling of these tokens? Are you actually carrying on a business of selling tokens or trading Bitcoin or converting, you know, Bitcoin? So there's very legal answer. There's no bright line. There's no clear answer, but yeah, depending on the circumstances, yeah, you might cross over a line, and now you're, you know, running a business, you know, trading in non-fungible tokens that, you know, are considered securities. It's going to depend on the facts, but it may also be that if you're just, you know, doing it between friends, and yeah, you're paying, but it's no different from, you may buying and selling things on Kijiji, which, as far as I know, is generally not subject to securities laws. So anyway, but I think the point is that there is a point where you can cross over and be engaged in a regulated activity under one regime or another.
Yeah, a non-fungible token might be one example, assuming that all the other facts fit okay, that you would be considered non-security. And there's an example of something similar to what you're describing called CryptoKitties, where it was non-fungible. And I see some smiles around. I think, does anybody own any CryptoKitties?
I don't want to admit to it.
Oh yeah. And so it's a collectible.
Yep.
And so they went to the BC Securities Commission and convinced them that this was not a security. And, you know, a good question whether if you went in with the same facts today, with the knowledge that they traded at, you know, for such high valuations, whether the Securities Commission would say it again. But a non-fungible token is, you know, like one factor that would help you to not be a security. So that you have identified one thing that that does move the needle towards utility rather than security.
I think the thing I'll add in the specific context of the gaming arena like you're talking about, I think I'm right in saying this, is that there's a distinction between whether there's the cryptographic nature of the coin and whether there's an underlying cryptography in the technology that's used to, you know, regulate that coin and the issuance and maintenance of it. As far as I'm aware, at least from a money laundering point of view, there is a distinction currently made between the cryptographic side of the coin or not. You know, there are various different types of virtual currencies. Cryptocurrencies is one subset of a virtual currency, the virtual currency realm. Things like Linden dollars from, you know, Second Life are